Did you know that African spirituality has always recognized the Almighty Creator, long before any missionary arrived? Many African traditions were rooted in the belief in one supreme God, just like in the Bible. The Botswana people called their creator Mimo, which means the one who is supreme and above. They believed Mimo was the source of all life and everything that exists. The Zulu, Akan, and Tonga had their own names for God, all pointing to his greatness and oneness. But here's the twist. Colonialism tried to erase all of this. It labeled African spirituality as primitive, forcing people to abandon their sacred practices and cutting them off from their heritage. This wasn't just about religion. It was about erasing a connection to identity, ancestors, and even the land. Today, we're flipping that script. This video is all about reclaiming the power and wisdom of African spirituality, challenging outdated narratives, and rediscovering its relevance in our modern world. So stick with me as we dive into why African spirituality is more important now than ever. Ready? Let's get into it. Despite centuries of outside influence, African spirituality remains a key part of the continent's identity. But let's be real, colonialism, slavery, and cultural suppression have taken a toll. Over time, traditional African spirituality has been overshadowed by Islam and Judeo-Christian beliefs, which were often forced onto people through conquests, deception, and cultural assimilation. Think about it. Missionaries and colonial powers didn't just bring new religions. They painted African traditions as backward and uncivilized. This disconnect from ancestral traditions didn't just strip people of their spiritual roots. It chipped away at their sense of identity and autonomy. Today, we live in a world where freedom of religion is a given, or so we're told. But the global framework for this freedom comes from a Western perspective, one that doesn't always align with African traditions. This system, built around ideas of individualism and rationality, often dismisses the communal and ancestral focus of African spirituality. Even Christianity, widely practiced across the continent, comes with its own baggage. Many Africans were introduced to it through colonialism, where it was often used as a tool for control. And yet, Christianity is sometimes seen as a symbol of success, education, or modernity, making it easier for people to identify with. The historical context of Christianity in Africa. The history of Christians in Africa began in the 1st century CE, during the Apostolic era, when early Christian leaders spread the gospel across the continent. Places like Egypt, Carthage, and Ethiopia became vibrant centers of Christian life. In fact, apostles like Mark and Matthew are believed to have preached in these regions. As Christianity grew in North Africa, it became a hotbed of theological thought. Influential figures such as Augustine and Tertullian emerged from this area, shaping not just local beliefs but also the wider Christian church. Surprisingly, many people don't realize that these early church fathers were African. Tertullian and Cyprian hailed from Carthage, now Tunisia, while Origen came from Alexandria in Egypt. They weren't just scholars. They were indigenous Africans who contributed immensely to Christian doctrine. Now, let's talk about the art we often see today. You might picture Jesus as a blue-eyed European, but that's far from reality. Jesus and his disciples were first-century Jews, likely with brown eyes and dark hair. This misrepresentation stems from colonial art that painted a misleading picture of Christianity as a white man's religion. But remember, Christianity actually started in the Near East and spread to Africa and Europe simultaneously. During the 2nd and 3rd centuries, North Africa thrived as a center of Christian scholarship. Theologians adapted the faith to local cultures, creating unique expressions of spirituality. Monasticism took root here too, thanks to figures like Anthony and Pomus, who emphasized community living and spiritual discipline. Fast forward to the 4th and 5th centuries, things got rocky for the church due to internal conflicts and doctrinal disputes. Then came the 7th century, when Islam began spreading rapidly across North Africa, changing the spiritual landscape once again. The introduction of Christianity to sub-Saharan Africa didn't happen until the 15th century with Portuguese traders. They found success converting local leaders in places like Guinea and Ghana. However, many Africans continued practicing their indigenous religions for centuries afterward. Colonialism brought a mixed bag of changes. While it introduced education and new opportunities, it also imposed European customs that often undermined local cultures. Despite this, Christianity took root deeply in African soil, evolving into something uniquely African: the role of missionaries and cultural suppression. Let's dive into a powerful and often painful chapter of history: the role of Christianity during European colonization in Africa. This story reveals how faith was used as a tool for domination, and it's crucial to understand its impact. When European colonizers set their sights on Africa, they didn't just bring guns and ships, they also brought missionaries. The Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885 marked a turning point, as European powers divided Africa among themselves. But this rapid colonization would have been much harder without the support of Christian missionaries. They played a key role in calming and controlling African communities, often using force to ensure obedience. These missionaries established mission centers that provided Western education and health care. While this might sound positive, it came at a huge cost. Indigenous knowledge systems, which were vital to African identity, were systematically erased. For centuries, African cultures were labeled as pagan, barbaric, and in desperate need of saving. Colonial powers claimed they were modernizing Africa through business and Christianity, but in reality, they were exploiting its rich resources and imposing foreign values. It's important to note that Islam also had its own complex relationship with African customs. While it didn't colonize Africa in the same way, both Christian and Islamic powers often viewed traditional African practices as backward. One notorious figure in this story is King Leopold II of Belgium. He treated the Democratic Republic of Congo as his personal property and instructed missionaries to wipe out African spirituality in favor of Western Christianity. His goal? To pacify the people and make it easier to exploit the land's resources for profit. As a result of this colonial domination, many Africans began to see their own spiritual practices as primitive or evil. They were taught that their traditional beliefs were worthless, leading to a damaging self-image that still affects perceptions today. The late Zimbabwean writer Dudu Marire described this as a massive brain operation, highlighting how deeply colonialism impacted the African mind. This legacy of self-hatred isn't just limited to Christianity. Islam also dismissed the value of indigenous spirituality. Ultimately, colonial Christianity became a tool for legitimizing brutal capitalist systems that continue to create poverty and inequality today. Reclaiming African spirituality today. African indigenous spirituality plays a crucial role in shaping the continent's moral landscape. Unlike many Western beliefs that focus on individualism and material wealth, African religions emphasize community well-being, where personal success is intertwined with the greater good of society. This holistic approach fosters a sense of unity and collective responsibility. In contrast, modern Christianity often reflects a neo-colonial mindset, promoting the idea of gospel entrepreneurship that prioritizes personal gain over communal harmony. This shift aligns with neoliberal capitalist values, which can overshadow the rich spiritual heritage of Africa. Historically, colonial-era Christianity was characterized by foreign-led churches and missionary efforts that viewed Africans as heathens needing salvation. This perspective undermined the authenticity of pre-colonial African spirituality. Historian Dr. Thomas Oden highlights that African Christianity actually predates European colonization, thriving in its own right before colonial influences disrupted its natural development. He emphasizes that Christianity was flourishing in Africa long before European explorers arrived. The spread of Christianity south from Jerusalem is a fascinating narrative often overlooked. For instance, the conversion of the Ethiopian eunuch in Acts 8 verses 26 to 40 marks one of the earliest instances of African Christianity around 30 to 40 AD. By the 4th century, Ethiopia had become one of the world's first Christian states, showcasing a vibrant and indigenous expression of faith. Early African scholars like Origen and Tertullian significantly contributed to Christian theology, while Egyptian monks known as Desert Fathers shaped Christian spirituality. Despite this rich history, many contemporary narratives about Christianity focus primarily on its European roots, neglecting Africa's substantial contributions. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church, established in the 1st century AD, is one of the oldest Christian denominations and reflects Africa's deep spiritual heritage. The story of Christianity in Africa is not just about its introduction, but also about its evolution and resilience against colonial narratives that sought to erase indigenous beliefs. As Dr. Roden points out, classical Christian theology has been profoundly influenced by African thought and practices, from worship language to biblical interpretation. Today, many African Christians remain unaware of their pre-colonial roots due to the lingering effects of colonialism. The colonial narrative has often overshadowed Africa's original Christian heritage, leading to a Eurocentric perspective that marginalizes indigenous expressions of faith. Dr. Roden's work aims to illuminate these overlooked histories and restore appreciation for Africa's integral role in shaping Christianity as we know it today. For nearly 2,000 years, the Church has grown across Africa, but the past 3 centuries of colonization left a heavy mark on its character. Today, however, a wave of African consciousness is reshaping the narrative. Many are working to decolonize and de-Westernize Christianity, reclaiming it in a way that reflects Africa's unique cultural and spiritual heritage. This movement dives deep into how we interpret the Bible, applying African perspectives to create a more holistic understanding. While some of these ideas have been explored before, recent efforts are taking a fresh approach, combining traditional wisdom with modern insights to build a complete picture of what Africanized Christianity can look like. Here's an important truth to take away. Christianity is not a white man's religion. Africans were among the earliest believers and theologians, shaping Christianity from its very beginning. The gospel is universal, it belongs to everyone, and that includes Africa. It's time we celebrate this history and recognize that Christianity is as much African as it is global. So, did you learn something new today? If so, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, share it with your friends and family, and hit that subscribe button to stay connected with us. Together, we can keep spreading the real truth of African history. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.